This presentation is on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and the 8 limbs of yoga. This is a synthesis of knowledge from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and the Yoga Sutras of Maharishi Patanjali. We'll be going through the 8 limbs of yoga and other aspects of the Yoga Sutras. Here's a picture of Maharishi Patanjali. He's the one who wrote the Yoga Sutras, and the Yoga Sutras are considered to be the principal text of yoga. There's some other texts that came later, but Patanjali is the real founder of yoga. We'll start with the first 3 verses of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. The first verse is Atta Yoga Anushasanam, which translates as now is the teaching on yoga. And as Maharishi Mahesh Yogi explained, the first word of an area of the Vedic literature contains that whole area of the Vedic literature in seed form. So the first word is now. So now encapsulates the entire teaching of the Yoga Sutras. So what could that be? Be in the now. Don't get caught up in random thoughts that drag you into an illusion of the past or the future. Be in the present. Now is the only reality that exists on the deepest level. How do we do this? Well, the second verse explains that. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the complete settling of the activity or the vrittis of the mind, the fluctuations of the mind. So all we need to do is settle those random fluctuations, those random thoughts that drag us into an illusion of the past or the future, so that we can be in the present, the now. We've all experienced this, where our mind is jumping all over the place like a monkey and we can't focus on what we're doing. So we need to settle down all those random thoughts of the mind so we can stay in the present and be focused in the now. Catching oneself, which is mindfulness, whenever we get caught in random thoughts, which are described in the Yoga Sutras in more details, vrittis, kleshas. You can look at the book if you want to understand all the different words, but catching yourself can be part of the process whenever we get caught in random thoughts or unhealthy behaviors. However, as Maharishi repeatedly explained, one generally needs to also practice a meditation, such as transcendental meditation, that spontaneously settles the mind and provides the experience of pure being, inner bliss, transcendental consciousness, and then the mind settles down. Otherwise, if we try just catching ourselves, we could waste many lifetimes in mindfulness trying to control random thoughts. We've all tried that. It's impossible because our mind jumps around so much. What are the characteristics of this completely settled state of the mind? Is it like being tranquilized by a tranquilizer? Verse gives a little more understanding. So once we've settled the mind, tada drashtu svarupe avasthanam, then the observer is established in self-awareness. So when we take a tranquilizer, we're not in self-awareness, we're kind of, groggy. So tranquilizer wouldn't work. We need to be in complete self-awareness when we settle the mind properly. And the Bhagavad Gita gives a little more detail about the state of yoga. Balance of mind is called yoga. So it's a state of complete balance and self-awareness, complete clarity of mind. So a tranquilizer wouldn't work. So now we'll go into a little more detail. We'll look at the 8 limbs of yoga, and we're going to look in detail at the first 4 of them in the most detail, and a little bit on the last 4 of the 8 limbs of yoga, which are these practical tools for developing self-fulfilled consciousness, the state of now. The 8 limbs of yoga are One is yama. Yama is often considered to be the lord of death. Maharishi says the lord of emptiness, which is really the state of self-referral, transcendental consciousness, the state of silence. And the Yama has 5 components, which we consider as universal principles for structuring emptiness. And we'll see those on the next slide. The second of the 8 limbs of yoga is called Niyama, behavioral guidelines. We'll go through all these in more detail later, but just this is giving an overview. Then the third of the Yama is asana, which is sometimes considered to be, or usually just postures, practices, yoga postures. Then pranayama, breathing practices. Then pratyahara, drawing the senses within. Dharana, focus, steadiness, sometimes translated as concentration. Dharana as meditation or transcending. Samadhi as transcendental consciousness, evenness, or enlightenment. And these 3 together are considered as one, as a process called sanyama. And we'll go into that in a little bit of detail later. And here we're going to be quoting several verses from the Yoga Sutras. So here is Sutra 228. When impurities is destroyed through the practice of the limbs of yoga, then the light of knowledge leads to discriminative awareness. This is like a state of enlightenment. Let's begin with yama, the first yama, the first limb, and the 5 yamas, the 5 elements that structure yama. So the 5 yamas, the 5 fundamental principles that structure yama, that state of yama is like the lord of emptiness, is how it's sometimes translated. We'll see a little bit more detail now. And there's a subtitle, Surrendering to Yama, the Divine Will Within, which is like the transcendental consciousness within, becoming an instrument of the divine. A practice derived from the 5 yamas. So this is a practice that has 5 steps that gives the experience of the 5 yamas. It helps to bridge a gap. And you'll see I'm really, it's been developing over time. It should be clearer now than it ever was before. So the first stage, or the first component of the 5 yamas, is called ahimsa, which is commonly translated as non-violence, compassion, non-harm. The quality that fulfills that is unconditional love. So if we feel unconditional love, that state of unconditional love for everything, naturally embodies non-violence, compassion. So feel unconditional love, be in the lap of God. You can put your hands on your heart. If you want, you can do this lying down. This is that experience of ahimsa. It gives the deepest value of that. We are eternally connected to the divine through love. And as an affirmation, I surrender to pure, divine, unconditional love. That fulfills ahimsa. And we're going to have 5 affirmations or experiences for these 5 steps, the 5 fundamental components of yama. The second of the 5 components is called satya, which is often translated as truthfulness. Maharishi's explained it's more than just, trying to tell the truth all the time. It's being in the state of truthfulness, which is the eternal truth, which is sat, the state of now. Within that love, if we feel our body, because our mind can be jumping around all over the universe, if we just feel our body, that brings us into the state of now. What is our body like right now? So the practice that goes with this is feeling the body, and there's a little more detail. I am the body sending love to heaven. So we start with ahimsa, feeling unconditional love as a practice. Then we feel our body. We still have that state of unconditional love. And for our body, we're sending out love to the environment, to heaven. The third state, and you'll see this sequence by the time we got through the five of them, it'll make more sense. Asteya is often translated as non-stealing. Maharishi explained you don't steal from the state of unity consciousness because you are the entire creation. So there is nothing to steal. So here within that state of love, experience of asteya is expand awareness to the entire creation. So rather than just satya was the feeling being the body, which brings us into the now, expand that body to the entire universe. And then it's asteya, that state of non-stealing, because we are the whole universe. There's nothing to steal. So within that love, expand awareness, the entire creation. I am everything. Individual body expands to become cosmic divine body. And the affirmation is, I am, or the experience, I am the cosmic divine body sending love back to earth. And you'll see this when you practice it later, how sweet it is. Then those three steps are the three principal steps. After that, the next two steps are automatic. So everything else is automatic. And this is what I experienced. I just spontaneously started having or understanding of ahimsa, satya, asteya. Then after some time, I just realized there was a wholeness of the three that was naturally created, and that was brahmacharya. So brahmacharya means seated, like charya means seated, brahma means wholeness. So seated in wholeness, and that state of the fullness of fullness, like fullness of everything, it just naturally dawned. And I thought, oh, that's amazing. And you could feel the love churning in your heart, expanding and engulfing the entire creation, the universe. And the affirmation there is, I am all layers and points of creation simultaneously churning with love. So this is an experience that naturally develops, or it just naturally happens. So this is 4 of the 5 yamas. There's only one left, one more component. The last component is called the parigraha, which is usually translated as non-possessing, like giving away all your possessions. But that's just a superficial understanding. It's really the state of witnessing when you're not attached to anything, the state of silence, which can be translated or understood as nirguna Brahm in Sanskrit, whereas brahmacharya was saguna Brahm, which is Brahm with qualities. Aparigraha, the 5th yama, is nirguna Brahm, Brahm without qualities, pure silence, so it's witnessing creation. I am nothingness, witnessing the love churning and permeating creation. So in stage 4, we experience the love churning and permeating creation. In stage 5, we became yama, I am yama, witness to it all. So like 5 stages building up to the experience of yama, witnessing the entire creation as love churning and permeating. So those were 5 yamas, 5 steps to enliven yama. Now we're going to reflect a little on it. So this is another verse of the Yoga Sutras. These great principles are universal and not qualified by birth, circumstances, place, or time. And that's from Yoga Sutras 231. So this is a practice that, because right at the beginning, I said this is a practice derived from the 5 yamas. When could we do this practice? And initially, I realized this was a perfect practice. For me, it just was happening spontaneously at night while lying down, getting ready for bed. Just you feel unconditional love, and you send that love to heaven, then you feel yourself as heaven sending love back to the body. Then you feel that love churning throughout creation. Then automatically you feel as, oh, you're witnessing the whole thing. And then that's a beautiful way, especially if you can't fall asleep at night, to just it's a practice to do. It settles everything down and you fall asleep at night. So at night, or yoga nidra is a practice for at night. This is one type of yoga nidra. Or before meals, if you want to settle yourself down before eating or before saying a prayer, or any time we feel drawn to connect to our divine nature. And I now find this happens quite naturally, anytime feeling to settle down and feeling that unconditional permeating love. Now, another point is don't worry about the exact wording. Soon you will not need the words, and you can change the words as to what fits for you. It'll just be a feeling. So you will not need the words. You close your eyes and you feel, all right, surrender to pure love, and feel yourself, I'm the body, I'm sending that love to heaven. Then and feel my body expanding and that love coming back from heaven to earth. Then I am the cosmic, and then feeling that love permeating the entire creation and churning, and then feeling oneself separate from it. It's a sweet experience. It will become second nature whenever you need it, and then it'll become closer to yama. And what I mean by that is initially it started as what do we call it? A practice derived from the five yamas, but when we let go of those words, it'll just be a feeling, and that feeling will be that quality of, you'll feel yourself as yama, the silence that witnesses creation. So this is a practice for experiencing that quality of yama. So next slide will be on niyama, the second limb of yoga. Now that we've made it through the yamas, so 5 niyamas, and this one is very practical. The niyamas are laws or rules of ideal behavior, guidelines for ideal behavior in service to the divine. And in terms of Sanskrit, incidentally, I thought it could be like ni. The word ni actually means like negation. So niyama would be not yama, could be translated that way. And since yama is the field of silence and like the absolute, niyama would be the field of relative behavior. And that's what this is. So while yama was the experience of that silence, niyama is the rules for behavior in the relative. And what are these? There's 5 niyamas. The first one is shauch, be clean, pure, orderly, reducing clutter and waste, live in simplicity. And this is profound. As you'll probably know if you practice this, once you create an orderly environment, then that's the foundation for everything else. The second of the niyamas is santosh, contentment, which translates exactly as you break the word down to fully gratified. So you're gratified inside, so you're not chasing after sensory, ego, financial, or power gratification. And this takes practice, focus, not getting caught on the internet or whatever. But cleanliness comes first, as we can't be contented without cleanliness. Then the third of the niyamas is tapas, which is translated as austerity, but it's really simpler than that. It's just avoiding excess, letting go of what we do not need, cutting back on unhealthy practices or distractions. It takes some willpower. Breaking away from bad habits makes space for new. healthy habits. And the fourth of the niyamas is swadhyaya, which is study of the self, which can be understood as knowledge from within. Listening to your intuition, your inner voice, because that's always there to guide when we listen to it. So when we break away from our old habits and the background noise, and we're living in an orderly environment, which is clean, orderly, automatically our inner voice will start speaking to us and guiding us. You see how these 5 yamas build up in sequence. And then the last of them is Ishwara Pranidhana, live life in devotion to God, the good of all, be an instrument of divine. The more we listen to our inner voice, the more it will guide us. Automatically, we will become an instrument of the divine. So the 5 niyamas are 5 steps to ideal behavior, becoming an instrument of the divine. So we've got through the yamas and niyamas. So we've got through 2 of the 8 limbs of yoga, and the next 2 are really the only 2 we go into detail with. So we're going along well. So next is asanas, which is the 3rd limb of yoga, and asana is normally understood as exercises. It translates to seated posture. And we're going to look at several of the verses from the Yoga Sutras to see what it actually is in the deepest level. So asana is commonly understood as physical exercises and stretches. There are many different yoga teachers, schools, and sets of yoga exercises called asanas. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras do not list any specific yoga postures or physical exercises, but just lay down some general principles, and that's what we're going to look at. So asana is steadiness, sthira, and ease, physical pleasantness, sukham. Then the next verse, chapter 2, verse 47, asana is perfected by sequential steadiness, relaxation of effort, and dawn of unboundedness. Ananta. Then from that comes freedom from pairs of opposites, pleasure, pain, heat, cold, etc., the field of duality. So when we practice asana properly, we become freed of pleasure, pain, heat, cold, etc. And that's all the sutras really that have to do with asana, just showing you what this leads to. After that, after asana comes the suspension of movement of inhalation and exhalation by pranayama, the regulation of breathing. These verses indicate the purpose of asana is to create a state of steadiness, ease, evenness, of comfort in the body before beginning pranayama. So that's what asana is for. So what lies within the range of yoga asanas? So just as a reflection, asana is not aimed at developing brute strength and muscle bodybuilding, but to create steadiness, evenness, ease, and comfort in the body is the foundation for pranayama and meditation. So here's a question. Could one consider, these are the things I went through. So this presentation is actually inspired by my own experiences, because I was having problems doing lots of the yoga asanas, and I ended up doing physiotherapy exercises, and this is actually what my yoga teacher recommended for me. And then only later did I go through the Yoga Sutras and realize that's okay. Because it says, could one consider as asana any physical exercises, stretches that create balance in the physiology and evenness, create healthy, comfortable, and steady posture for pranayama, meditation, and activity. Could physical therapy be considered yoga asana? And I've decided yes, because it works for me, or maybe what about massage, acupuncture, hot yoga, or other therapies? Well, according to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, what we've seen so far, this could be considered okay if it has the right effect of creating, balance, and as long as it's not straining and creating pain and all that. And I'm just reflecting on these just because these can supplements that strengthen the physiology. These are ones that help me: magnesium glycinate, vitamins D3 and B12, iodine. Be considered yoga asana? I'm not sure, but they're definitely complementary to it for me. But according to what we've seen so far, they could be considered in that range, but perhaps other yoga texts, would limit the physical stretches. This is my reflection, just my own experience. I was straining for years to sit without back support during meditation. And consequently, I was hunching over, harming my back, having terrible posture. And now I'm realizing that really wasn't yoga asana because it was messing up. It was having the wrong effect on me. So that's my own reflection. And how to accommodate individual differences in needs. And I'll just point out one thing is right now I'm taking an online yoga course with, a certified yoga teacher. And she makes the point that the concept of one yoga set for everybody isn't how yoga is taught normally. It has to be individualized. One size fit all yoga asanas doesn't really work. Now, Maharishi didn't have time to train yoga teachers. He did exactly what which was most important at the time, giving out a general set of asanas. But that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. You might need to do physiotherapy. You might need to, other exercises to see a certified yoga teacher, and that's the point. And how to judge your process is a concept people have of no pain, no gain. That doesn't work in yoga because we're not here to create pain and to strain. We're here to create a state of evenness and balance and physical health. That's how we know it's working. So that's all for the first three limbs. So the next one, pranayama, is the one we're going to spend the most time on, and then after that it'll be downhill, because this is actually the most profound one for me. Pranayama, regulation of prana or breath. Pranayama is commonly understood as breathing techniques. There are many different pranayama techniques taught by different yoga teachers. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras do not list any specific pranayama techniques, but lay out some profound guidelines. And this is a huge aha experience for me. So we already saw this first. After that, after pranayama comes the suspension of movement of inhalation and exhalation by pranayama, the regulation of breath. Now, this is really the key verse, the most profound verse for me for pranayama. And this is because of what I was taught in the yoga course that I'm taking. And we've seen many different videos from many different yoga teachers. And this is what this says, verse 50 of chapter 2. Breathing practices involving variations in number of breaths, duration of each breath, and breathing to different areas of the body during inhalation, exhalation, and suspension can result in the breath becoming long and subtle. And the first point here, I'll just say this, is we want conscious breathing. It's not sitting and doing a pranayama practice while you're studying for an exam or driving your car. That doesn't work. Non-conscious breathing, because that's what I was doing for years, and I never had any benefit from it. It's just my mind was wandering all over the universe, thinking of all the things I had to do during the day. And I always wondered why it didn't really do anything for me. So we'll look at a few techniques, including Ujjayi pranayama. But here's the next verse. The fourth state of consciousness dawns, which transcends internal and external experiences. Then the covering over the light is removed. So pranayama, when practiced properly, gives a transcendence experience, an experience of inner light, and the mind becomes fit for steadiness, dharana. So pranayama, regulation of prana, or breath. Preparation for pranayama. This is also important, is proper posture. Breathe, and I put this verse up again just because it's really key for me. Breathing practices involving variations in number of breath, durations of each breath, and breathing to different areas of the body, meaning being aware of different areas of the body during inhalation. And the key thing will be diaphragmatic breathing, and we'll explain why. And this, thus, pranayama requires correct, conscious breathing, being aware of one's body in the process of breathing. But first, we establish a good posture, and this is very much emphasized by all the schools of yoga, by sitting up straight, elongating the spine, and engaging these three bandhas, which are specific points in the body. One is, and we'll go through them now one at a time. So good posture is important. And that's important for me, that I found out. So first is like pressing they call them the sits bones, which is like the bones at the bottom of your, by your pelvis, like so if you, and this is not something you would do during your meditation or anything, or even during the pranayama, but just getting your posture ready before you begin. So you squeeze your buttocks to engage the pelvic floor, and there's many exercises for pelvic floor strengthening and for grounding the mula bandha, which is the root lock, one of the three bandhas, and this is associated with the root chakra. If one wants, one can visualize roots growing from the root chakra into the ground. So if you're sitting up straight, then the next bandha is with the stomach or abdomen, drawing in the stomach. These are things we're always, or probably a lot have been told as a child. Sit up straight, draw in your stomach. If you go into the army, put a proper posture, draw your abdomen in. Otherwise, if we go on a computer, we end up always slouching over in bad posture that messes up our back. So drawing in our abdomen, inward and upwards. This engages our abdominal muscles and our diaphragm, and we'll explain a little more about the diaphragm in a minute, to strengthen our core and engage Uddiyana Bandha, the abdominal lock, and that's associated with the solar plexus chakra. Then the third step for proper posture is drawing the shoulders back and down, the head up and centered. Then in the yoga, for you, the actual bandhas in the throat. So we tuck the chin slightly downwards, not a big deal, towards the chest to engage the muscles in the neck and throat. And we would constrict the airflow a little. This is the most, the one that maybe people less heard about, engaged ground Jalandhara Bandha, the throat lock associated with the throat chakra. And this calms the mind. Now, preparation for pranayama. So this is the last, or practicing pranayama. This is the last of the pranayamas. Note diaphragmatic breathing, and this you can get if you do research on the internet. So breathing from the diaphragm, especially deep and slow breathing, mechanically stimulates the vagus nerve, which runs through the diaphragm, triggering the parasympathetic nervous system and relaxation. Diaphragmatic breathing also increases available oxygen in the cells, which leads to many health benefits. So many, doctors are recognizing this now, health professionals, the importance of diaphragmatic breathing. So this is naturally a part of the pranayama practices. I'm just having to move something on my screen so I can see. The vagus nerve, or the 10th cranial nerve, is a major pathway connecting the brain to internal organs. It plays playing a crucial role in regulating vital functions like heart rate, digestion, inflammation, and acting as a key component of the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. I put this in just so we understand this. It's a key significance to the effectiveness of calming the system down is awareness in the body and diaphragmatic breathing. All practices of pranayama require conscious breathing, being aware of one's body in the process of breathing. You may be amazed at the results. I was. So I put this in, and this is really important to me because I was just doing non-conscious breathing before, and for pranayama, it didn't do anything. But now that it's with conscious breathing, it's like all of a sudden I realized, oh, this is what I've been wasting my time. So we're going to look at 3 pranayama practices. The first pranayama is a simple one. It's just for getting started, box breathing. So on the count of 4, with the awareness on the body and the breathing, smoothly breathe in, first filling the diaphragm. You feel the diaphragm move out, your chest move out. Then your chest and lungs move out. Then the throat. So you're just smoothly filling yourself out. Then you pause for 4 seconds. Then the count, you exhale, emptying the throat first, then the chest and lungs, then the diaphragm. Then you pause for 4 seconds. Then you start all over again. You repeat several times. So it's called box breathing because it's like 4 seconds. Inhale, 4 seconds, pause, 4 seconds, exhale, 4 seconds, pause. Then you keep going around in a circle. And this one's really easy. And it's like for teaching pranayama is the first one that you teach. And the second, there's many different pranayamas, but I just went directly into the alternate nostril breathing, Nadi Shodhana pranayama. So after a normal inhale, and people in yoga exercises, normally they'll take their right hand, and they'll do the 2 fingers in the middle. You fold that in, put the thumb over one. So after close the right nostril, exhale, emptying first the throat, the chest, lungs, then the diaphragm. Then you pause a little. Then you inhale, filling the diaphragm, the lungs, then the throat. Then you switch fingers. You close the left nostril with the pinky and the one beside it. I guess that's the ring finger. Open the right nostril, and then you exhale first from the throat and the chest and lungs, then the diaphragm. Then you inhale. So you just go back and forth. If you've been practicing alternate nostril breathing, it's the same, except now your awareness of your body, rather than having your awareness be flying around at all the errands you need to do during the day. Then the third and the last of the pranayamas is Ujjayi pranayama, which is considered maybe the king of the pranayamas, or the one and you just start by constricting the throat. In order to understand this, you can pretend you put your hand in front of yourself, pretend it's a mirror, and you try and, if you're fogging a throat, you can feel or fogging a mirror, you can feel your throat constricting. And that's with your mouth open. But now if you close your mouth and do feel that same constriction, and exhale through your nose, you feel that constriction. So you're engaging the muscles at the back of the throat, which is the throat bandha. And there's a noise that can sound like, some people call it Darth Vader breathing, or it can be like ocean breathing. So it's similar to box breathing with both nostrils open, but without counting. So your head's forward. I'm sure you can't hear me, but I'm making a little noise. And I'm be breathing in from my diaphragm, then my um, or then my chest, then coming up to my throat, or then hold it, then exhale in reverse order. So this engages all the bandhas, including the throat. And with the throat constricted slightly, one engages all three bandhas. Now, so we finished most of the presentation. Now we'll just go through the last of the last four. So the last four of the 8 limbs of yoga, then there'll be one little addition at the end. So pratyahara is the fifth of the 8 limbs of yoga, turning the senses inward. So Yoga Sutras 254 says, when the mind settles down and withdraws from contact with external objects, and awareness or intention moves inward to experience one's essential nature, pure consciousness, the self, then the senses, oops, I have to move something. Then the senses follow. This is pratyahara, turning the senses inward. From pratyahara, the senses take on their supreme value in service to self-realization. So this is my question that I ask myself. If pratyahara occurs automatically once the mind settles down and awareness moves inward, why is pratyahara considered a separate limb? This is my understanding, which came to me. During asanas and pranayama, our attention, if we're doing it correctly, has gone outward to our breath and our body. In preparation for the inward dive of meditation, we now need to change gears and let our senses turn inward. So we need to let go of that attention on our breathing and our attention on our body and where our breath is going in our body, because during meditation, we're letting go and turning inward. So pratyahara is that letting go and turning inward. And perhaps this is my understanding or guess. Maharishi avoided instructing us to put attention on the body or the breath during pranayama. He did not want us to concentrate on our body or on our breath, and that could carry into our meditation, which is without concentration. So this is emphasis that we need to allow pratyahara to occur. If we do our asanas and pranayama with attention on our body, we need to remember to let go of that with pratyahara. So when we practice our meditation without that concentration or focus. Also, as a reminder, we need to turn off our phones and prepare ourselves and our environment so we can give full attention to our meditation practice. So that's another aspect of pratyahara during turning our attention inward. And I just like this quote. I don't know, maybe it's not necessary, but Maharishi once said, humans have an advantage over angels in that humans can close their eyes, turn their senses off, and transcend, while angels cannot close their eyes. They can't practice pratyahara because the celestial king is so heavenly gorgeous that they can't close their eyes. So that's kind of a cute quote. So now, next, the last 3 limbs of yoga, and we're going to look at them together. The last 3 limbs of yoga: dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. Dharana, steadiness or focus. Dhyan is meditation or transcending. And samadhi, oops, let me move this. Transcendental consciousness, the state of even intellect, are the last 3 limbs of yoga. In verse 4 of chapter 3. So chapter 3 is more on the cities, the city process, called the vibhutis, and the practice of sanyama and dharana. The 3 dharana, dhyan, and samadhi practiced together are called sanyama. Through mastery of Sanyama, the splendor of complete wakefulness dawns. And I'll just say Sanyama is utilized in the TM City program and advanced practice of transcendental meditation, developing, higher abilities. Maharishi also explained that the process of Sanyama underlies the manifestation process in nature. So the TM cities are for enhancing our ability to manifest our desires. And it's a parallel to the process that nature uses for manifesting. The mechanics of Sanyama are beyond the scope of this presentation. For more understanding of Sanyama, one may learn the TM City program or study chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutras. So next, this is the last section, the highest value of the 8 limbs of yoga. So this will be the last section. In 1974, Maharishi said that underlying and maintaining the entire creation is a continual pulsating between fullness of fullness and fullness of emptiness. So this is from a talk in 1974 at San Moritz, Switzerland. Maharishi said the highest value of the 8 limbs of yoga is in maintaining this continual pulsating that underlies and sustains creation. So the question is, where can we locate this pulsation between fullness of fullness and fullness of emptiness that underlies creation, and the role of the 8 limbs of yoga in maintaining this process? So where can we find this highest value of the 8 limbs of yoga? Answer: we already located fullness of fullness and fullness of emptiness as the last 2 of the 5 yamas. So we've got a head start on this. So let's see that in the next slide. So here's a review of the 5 yamas, locating fullness of fullness and fullness of emptiness of the last 2 yamas. So these, I'll just go. So the 5 yamas were ahimsa, satya, asteya. So ahimsa was unconditional love, being in the now, non-stealing, asteya, and then brahmacharya, which was the fullness of fullness, and aparigraha, which is fullness of emptiness. So we go through these 5 yamas, and we already located fullness of fullness of fullness of emptiness. So now what we need to do is find the pulsating between fullness of fullness of fullness of emptiness that underlies and gives rise to creation. Where can we locate a pulsating between fullness of fullness and fullness of emptiness and show that this pulsation gives rise to and sustains the entire creation? We only need to look at Maharishi's tenfold structure of Brahm, which is the next slide and about the last slide. The tenfold structure of Brahm, creation emerging from the pulsations between fullness of fullness and fullness of emptiness. And I'm not going to go through this in huge detail, but I'm going through this just overview of the steps of the tenfold structure. From the first stage was fullness of emptiness, which is Nirguna Brahm, which is unqualified Brahm. The second stage was fullness of fullness, which was Saguna Brahm, qualified Brahm, Brahm with dynamism within it. The third stage was Maharishi described as Smriti, or memory, which is like a holding the 2 together. And we'll relate this to asana in a minute, because it's like the seat that holds the 2 together. The next stage of the tenfold Brahm was Atma, which is like a pulsating. This relates to pranayama in a sec, because it's a pulsating between fullness of fullness and fullness of emptiness. Then there's some dynamism inside. Actually, there's a friction that's created by these 2 directions rubbing against each other. That creates Agni, which is fire. And out of that fire comes out material creation. And so stage 6 is outside this square. And what comes out is the Vedas, material creation. So that's the first 6 stages, the tenfold structure of Brahm. The 7th stage, Maharishi said, was the actual seer, whose name was Shanmuka, who saw this cognition. Then the 8th was the process of seeing. The 9th of the tenfold structure of Brahm was undivided Prakriti, which is like the undivided. There's like 8 fundamental components of nature, the 8 prakritis, and there's an undivided value of them. Then Purusha is infinite silence. So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but if you want to do that, you can look at the talk that I gave with Dorothy Rowe, and I'll give a link later. Can we show that the 8 limbs of yoga maintain this pulsating? So we found the pulsating between fullness and fullness, the fullness of emptiness, and the tenfold structure of Brahm. How does this relate to the 8 limbs of yoga? Well, the first limb, yama, silence, is that fullness of emptiness. The second limb, the yama, relates to dynamism, the field of behavior, and that relates to the second stage of the simple structure Brahm, fullness of fullness. The third limb, asana, which is seating the two together, relates to smriti, the third stage. The fourth limb, pranayama, relates to the stage 4, atma, the pulsating between the two. The fifth limb, pratyahara, is the stage 5 inside the energy source within. And then limbs 6 to 8, sanyama, relate to the process, the mechanics of material creation. And that's what comes out, stage 6. So we've found that the relationship between the tenfold structure of Brahm and the 8 limbs, or the 8 limbs of yoga, gives rise to this pulsation between fullness of fullness and fullness of emptiness that underlies and sustains creation. And for more details, see the previous interview with Dorothy Rowe. So that's it. So that's the full presentation.